We are excited to introduce to you our first speaker, Harper Reed.
Harper is the CEO of Modest Inc., which is a mobile platform that gives people the ability to buy from anywhere. He's also the Chief Technology Officer for Obama for America 2012. He revolutionized social media campaigns forever. He previously worked as a Chief Technology Officer for a clothing company called Threadless. Besides all this technical accomplishments, Mr. Reed is known for his awesome hairstyle and probably being one of the coolest guys ever. Please welcome Harper Reed.
Hello. So, hi, I'm Harper. Feel free to follow me on Twitter. That's the most important thing today, right? Today I want to talk about something really simple, which is kind of these accelerants that I've had in my life. But before that, I want to talk a little bit about kind of what I have done and what are the things that kind of, where I use these accelerants. And so, obviously, the first thing I want to talk about is myself. And I want to go back in time a little bit, back to 1988. When I got this computer. Does everyone know who this is? Steve Jobs, Steve Wozniak, and some other guy. But this is the computer, an Apple IIc computer. This is the first computer I got. I don't remember how old I was. I guess I was 10 years old doing math. And as a 10-year-old, I got this computer, and it was this amazing experience. This computer that allowed me to discover all these things like programming and just general computing. But then I read this book when I was about 13. Has anyone read this book? It's a great book. Basically, this book is about hackers. It's about this idea of, well, all these ideas of sharing and openness, the hands-on collaborative, these really neat things that I really took and kind of took into my life, into my career. And I experienced this, and I realized, much to my mother's chagrin, that I'm a hacker, that my background, that my beliefs, all these things that for the most part, my identity is of hacker. And I went to college, of course, and I became a coder, learned computer science and all that fun stuff. Some time passes, and then I found this company called Threadless. Has anyone here heard of Threadless? A great Chicago company. And Threadless does this interesting thing, which is really interesting for me because we accidentally invented crowdsourcing. We had no idea what we were doing. All we were doing was this simple thing of making t-shirts. But once we went to MIT and we sat there at MIT and we were like, you know, hey, MIT, what's up? And they're like, oh, hey, Threadless, you invented crowdsourcing. And we were just like, crowd what? What are you talking about? All we're doing is making this into that. This very simple idea of taking this great crowd, we just thought it was our friends, and making these wonderful t-shirts. And really this was about 4 steps, really. There's design, submission. People like y'all would design things and submit them. And then you would score them and then upload them, and cash money would then fall from the ceiling into our pockets. This was perfect for everyone, of course. And really this kind of experience was really neat because even though we were inventing crowdsourcing, all these things that we didn't know about, really what we were just doing is making these really wonderful t-shirts. And around 2009, I did the one thing that I think is one of the most important things for every person to do in their careers, which is, once you accomplish all your goals, is to quit. And that's really important, and so I ask all of you to quit with me today. Who's with me? Okay, a handful of people. Not school, though. Don't quit school. So around this time I went on a vision quest. Does anyone here know what a vision quest is? Anyone? Okay, 1 or 2 people. So this vision quest is when you go into the desert and you find your spirit animal, usually through the ingestion of a lot of drugs. But that's not what I'm suggesting. What I did is I went to a venture capital firm and I learned how startups work, which was my vision quest. I think it's very similar. And I did this vision quest, and a little bit of time goes by, and some interesting things happen, and really what I experienced was the Barack Obama campaign found me, and this guy here, Michael Slavey, who's this amazing guy, he found me, he was the CTO in 2008, and Michael Slavey found me, and he's this like great guy, and he's like, hey Harper, you know, why don't you help us out? And I was like, okay, and so this is me. Let's do that transition again. It's a good transition. And I was a CTO in 2012. And this is really exciting for me because, you know, I really had no idea what I was doing, but that's okay. It's all about learning. And, you know, the thing about this was everyone just kept saying, you know, this is a real campaign asset. Like, this is someone in the digital team made this and put it on our Tumblr. And all the old people in the campaign are like, what? YOLO? But the real question here is why Harper, right? Why Harper? And the first person that asked this, of course, was my mother. She was like, why you? You know, I was just like, come on, Mom, like, what do you mean, why me? But to get into this, you have to look at the difference between 2008 and 2012. In 2012 and between 2008. In 2008, we were a startup. The Obama campaign was this thing. No one knew if it was going to last for 3 months, 1 month, 2 months. It was this thing that was this startup, like a kind of a very small thing that grew into this giant thing. Whereas in 2012, we were this giant organization, an enterprise, a billion-dollar company. And so they needed someone that could fit that persona, someone who had done big things before, big companies before, especially on technology. And on technology, what we did is we built this giant team, a very simple thing of building a very large, very big team. The team we built was from all these great companies. That's obviously the most important company. And we put all these people together, and we built this platform. And then the platform allowed us to focus on the products. And these products were all these things that all these wonderful volunteers used, like a call tool, a dashboard, our mobile apps, our contribution apps, which were amazing, a lot of people giving a lot of money to help the campaign have a future, social media, which I'm sure a lot of us love, and a lot of data. All of these apps combined allowed for the campaign to be successful, and obviously we won, which was very good. And so all this stuff, I use these things that I call my accelerants, and I really didn't think about that word much, acceleration. I didn't really think, what is an accelerant in your life? And I started to look at what is the thread between Threadless, between the Obama campaign, and what are the things that I've used over and over again? And so I thought I would document some of these things. And so here are my accelerants. And obviously, like all things that you see on stage, you shouldn't believe anything. And so your mileage may vary here, so don't really listen to me. Just kind of look at it and say, okay. So the first one here is creativity. This is something that we use in every single situation. And when I think about creativity, I always think of this scene, right? This is Glengarry and Glen Ross. Has anyone seen this movie? I have never seen this movie. But the important thing here is what everyone tells me whenever I say, I don't see this movie. Everyone says ABC, right? Always be closing. This is what everyone talks about. But I actually think this is super boring. I don't want to be closing. I want to be creative. And when I think about this, I think always be creative. When you're trying to solve a problem at school, when you're trying to solve a problem at work, when you're hiring someone, it's always about creativity. It's never about closing. Closing is just a side effect of being very creative. The next one is diversity. This is something I think is really important. This is something that really powers success. When I think about diversity, I think about this very simple idea about working with people that look different than you. And I joke sometimes that that's probably not very hard for me, but it actually is. It's much easier for me to work with white men in technology than it is to not. And that's pretty messed up. And so every day I think, how do I make my teams? How do I make the people that are working on this project, how do I make all these people make sure that they're diverse, that they're people that will bring different insights, different innovations, different cultural contexts into my world, and so that we can have the success that we want and that we hope for. And so the two things about that, this is kind of my two mantras. The first one is that we have to try. We have to try hard to get that to happen. And the second thing is we have to talk about it, successes and failures, because diversity won't come to us if we just ignore it. And I think in technology specifically, which is my world, oftentimes we ignore it. So I want to make sure we don't do that. The next one is a network. And this is a little harder to talk about, but there's this really great idea of, like, people say, oh, well, you need a network. You need to make sure your network is good and big and all this fun stuff. And this started, when I was very young. But this idea of, like, how do you create the network of people around you that you want to participate in, that network that you want to be in? And that goes back to diversity. How do you make sure that all the people that you hope that are in that network are there? And I don't have a good, action on here is how you do that. But when I look at what has made me successful, it's always the network. That's always the beginning. It may not be the end, but it's always the beginning, and that's really important. But here's my favorite one, actually, simplicity. Simplicity is one that we all value. We all value simplicity of interfaces, simplicity of devices, simplicity of experiences. And I have a simple rule that guides my simplicity, and this is my favorite rule in the world, which is don't be clever. Who here likes to be clever? So for the people who here pays taxes? Okay, good, that's a good, I think, delineator. For the people who pay taxes, this is my rule on how to define if you're clever or not. When your tax accountant says, I have a clever idea, we all run, right? We run fast and we run far, but oftentimes we think, I have a clever idea, and it never works out well. It always ends in tears. And so this is my rule, don't be clever, don't ever be clever. Think, if you have this thing where you're like, I have a clever idea, be like, I'm just gonna step back, not be clever. Luck is another one that I think is a huge part of success of my life, of the things, the path I've taken. And when I think of luck, I think of this very simple equation, right? It's when preparation meets opportunity. We've probably all heard this before. But this is this thing, when all the opportunities that I've received, that I've accomplished, everything that I've gone into, where I suddenly find myself, I'm like, oh no, I'm the CTO for the president's campaign. Like, that's the opportunity. But that wasn't there without preparation. And so every day I practiced, every day I programmed, every day I used computers, every day I did this. I sacrificed various things for another thing, always for preparation, so that that opportunity would be there. And that preparation brought me there, and that was really exciting. But my final thing here, which I'll leave you with, is I think fun. But this is the thing that really pushed on it, because a lot of times what people say is, you know, Harper, you've done all these really innovative things, and I'm always apparently on the front of innovation, but I don't really know that, because all we're trying to do is repeat things over and over again. And so innovation is a weird thing, but I'll go to my friend, not really my friend, but someone that I look up to, Kanye West. Who here knows Kanye West? A few people, okay. That might be a bigger group than the tax people. But the thing about Kanye West is Kanye West on the internet kind of says crazy things sometimes, right? Like, he says things and everyone's just like, oh, Kanye. But the thing is you gotta pay attention, because Kanye West sometimes says things that are really important. And the other day I was reading a Kanye West interview, and he says a couple things, and I was blown away. And here's what he says. So he says, innovation gets almost too much credit. And keep in mind that, you know, if I'm hired by a company, oftentimes they're like, we're hiring you because of your innovative thoughts. I'm just like, what does that mean? I have no idea. But Kanye is like, innovation gets too much credit. And I agree strongly. Innovation does get too much credit. And then he goes on to say, there's no money in innovation. Which, when we think about innovation, and we think about this idea of innovating, and we think of, you know, that doesn't make sense necessarily, but then he says the magic words here, which is, the money is in repetition. This idea that if we're going to do something that's innovative, it's only innovative if you're able to repeat it. So when I think of that final accelerant, I think of repetition, the ability to do something over and over and over again. And innovation itself doesn't actually matter, because we can be very innovative. We can go into our garage, we can make the most innovative thing in the world, but if no one sees it, it doesn't exist. If no one experiences it 100 times, it doesn't exist. And so repetition here is the key. When I think of that final thing that takes everything and wraps it together and allows success to happen, it's that repetition. Doing these things over and over again, practicing, making sure it works. And this is how I view things. It is you test it out, you make sure it works. You repeat it just to do it again, and then you just keep doing that over and over again, and eventually get to that final step there, which is you weaponize that thing. And then it's out there, and it's done. And it's great. Those are my accelerants. Thank you very much for listening.